cheaper? Does it look better? I'm not really sure. I think, that abandonment of the long-term, outlook, the long-term plan, that's pretty much of a bad thing. I happened to see Mr. Wonderful when you had him on halftime. That was pretty funny. It was a lot of hemming and hawing, and then you got him to say, all right, you know what? They suck. It's terrible. I mean, that was a pretty material guidance down. I agree that it's going to take a long time for them to build back confidence among the street, but also, even though it had come down a lot, it was pretty expensive going into this. And as we're re-rating expensive things, this deserved to be somewhat re-rated. It's interesting to me that, a lot of the other fintech companies, a company like Square, down a lot on this. I don't know if it should have been, but Square also is not super cheap. So, it was too expensive for me before. It's actually still too expensive with this sort of hair on it right now. So I would not be a buyer.
If you own PayPal, Steve Grasso, is there like a three-quarter rule? I mean, you are a big proponent of the 3-day rule and I ask you this because it's been 2 quarters so far that it's been massively disappointing. And so do you hang in and give it a third quarter, or do you say, you know what, I'm done with this thing?
No, I think that you have to see the moves and the magnitude of these moves. And if you go back on the chart, when they were interested in making that acquisition, that some were on board and then some were not on board with, for me, it stuck out like a red flag. And Josh Brown actually pointed this out on Closing Bell. It seemed to me that they knew that growth was slowing, so they had to go out and buy what they perceived as growth. And it wasn't going to be a great acquisition. So that, to me, is a long-term tell. So I'm not sure you could just make a technical play on it. This is more fundamental, longer term. I think you really have to see it substantively hold before you get back in.
FinTech across the board sold off today on the back of this. So, Tim, go through the rubble. Is there a name you think is overdone, or is it all just a no-touch at this point?
Well, again, Wall Street has a lot of vernacular and acronyms where suck comes in to be descriptive and assess, who really has whose trajectory has totally changed. I mean, look, I would just say that I think companies in the mega cap land are of a very different ilk, and therefore I think on some level, if you look at stocks that have been higher multiple stocks, and PayPal, is a stock that actually, again, if you take it back to where it traded down to today, this is a company that was a high growth stock in 2019 and basically has performed now to this point, to today's number, as a stock that's probably only worth a 25 multiple, not the 45 that it had. When you look at the competition in digital and online payments and frictionless payments, and MasterCard and Visa are formidable, Amex formidable, and I think the numbers that they showed were actually quite good. I think the environment we have right now, where we're punishing high multiple stocks, is one that's not going to change. It's not going to change, especially in a world, B of A, as we talked about yesterday, has seven price hikes on the horizon for 22. That may be aggressive. But I think we're still trying to figure out what the multiples on these stocks. The fact that JP Morgan went from 280 to 190 in a heartbeat on one announcement from PayPal, whose 4Q wasn't terrible, but their guide was awful, tells you that the street's still behind.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of price targets got slashed, but the ratings remain the same pretty much across the board. Cramer, by the way, is all over this PayPal plunge. He wrote about it in today's Investing Club newsletter. Check it out. All the information you need is right there on your screen. Coming up,